Hi, so this is Dr. Alana. It is running late today due to an error on my part, but I have a room full of people and we are set to answer some questions. So I am happy to do that, but I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to focus on the final defense for just a moment before I move on to questions. So these slides are up in the handouts, and there are also, if you go to the PD Education site, on the right-hand side, there's, in the to-do list, there's a must-watch videos. And the videos, there's one called Surviving Your VIVA or Final Defense. Well worth watching. I do just want to say that this is the last week. We are going to have this continue in the fall. There will be 2 meetings a month. And one of the things that was discussed in the last session was whether or not early in the morning works for some people who also are working. So the last group opted to work at 5 a.m. in their time zone in Texas because they're educators and they have to get to school early. So if any of you in the room would like to really be part of an ongoing group, during the chat, if you could put in what time and day you might consider, we'll see if there's some confluence that we can go for, and then have this group have that before I set the calendar for the fall. Many of you might be living and working at home still, and you might have flexibility in your day, so please tell me if that's true too. But it's challenging times and we want to meet as many of you as possible. There will be an August email coming out in the next, this week. I think at the end of this week, it's looking like might be the beginning of next. And we will have box sets of everything that's happened this summer coming to you by email. And I will, as I'm saying, continue with open office hours for a pre-proposal group, a post-data group, and a general conversation that's been asked for by our universities about the body-mind-spirit connection during times like these that have so much uncertainty. So how do we take care of ourselves? How do we keep our graduate work going? How do we keep our lives going? There will be some of those kinds of conversations as well as I look forward to putting the fall together. So I also want to say that I'm just finishing up the book, Navigating the Hidden Curriculum of Graduate School, Thriving in and Out of Academic Life. And so maybe I'm reading the chat and I'm thinking maybe I didn't start early. Oh, how crazy is time zone? You know, fortunately, we're all living in an online space and we can see, no, I'm sorry, this is early, you guys. This meeting isn't supposed to happen for another little bit. Oh, okay. So unfortunately, I just rushed in. I didn't look it up. And so many of you were here. Oh, it's a peculiar thing because I can't stop and start the recording. Let me go through what I had to say. Apologies for people watching by recording as there's some toing and froing in the room. I'm going to go through what I have to say about this and then the questions that come up. And some of you are here and will hear it all, and some of you will be back, and everybody will have the recording. I think that's probably safest. And how funny that so many of you came into the room an hour early. It's just an interesting time, isn't it, when we get things online and we're all over the world as far as our time schedule goes. Anyway, back to business. I'm just finishing the book, Navigating the Hidden Curriculum of Graduate School, Thriving in and Out of Academic Life. And anybody who wants a copy and wants to write a review. Early copies come with a request to please write a review. If that's of interest to you, please write me an email. And my email address is Alana, ALANA, at dralnet.com. And I'm happy. I'm in the last throes of editing. And so my anticipation is it'll come out to you sometime next week. Yeah, more toing and froing about the time. So people who can be flexible, thank you for writing in what might work for time for future meetings. When I'm going to watch this space, I'll remind us of it again. And then what I wanted to say before we go into the questions. So your group voted that you would like to answer questions today. And so I haven't gone to WooClap, but I can go there now, and I'm imagining that there will be lots of questions. But before I do that, and maybe it's good we have a little extra time, I want to make sure you know what your end game is going to be like. I want you to think about the fact that you are writing, that you will have lots of readers, but the readers that make the biggest thing to you are your committee and your supervisor and the mixture of that, and that there are many points of view, and that at the final defense, you cannot count on the fact that they care whether or not you pass. Their jobs are to look for rigor and to protect the university. And to the extent that you come from a university that prides itself on its reputation and its rigor, these committees can work for you or against you, as far from your personal point of view. Because your personal point of view is that you want to get out. You want to have this be done. So how do you compete against that? You need to really do the best work you can. You've all seen Adrienne and how she's worked it through and worked it through and worked it through again, from getting her argument in every possible place and highlighting it and noting it and making sure that the flow is picture perfect as you could possibly be according to all the standards we have talked about. And that's a lot of work. But how else can you do it? In a body, mind, spirit way, you need to have practiced this work. You need to be secure on your feet. You need to like your slides. You need to have, even if you're so tired of this work, you can't stand it anymore, by the time you're done, for that final defense, you need to dig back into the place where it's exciting and let some of the passion you have for your field and your work come through. Everything you know how to do to bolster your self-confidence, you should do prior to this final event. And then I'm just going to say that there has been some, how do they judge? Well, every committee's different, because every committee is based upon the personal background and experience of those people. So the more you know about their personal background and experience, the more you've had a chance to ask them what's important to them, the more you've talked to other people who have perhaps had them on committees, the better chance you have. But at the end of the day, you need to figure out where your work is. And I really like the work. This is the work of Barbara Lovitz. These are in your slides. I'm not going to go through them in detail, although if you go to the webinar on surviving your 5-hour final defense, I do go through them in detail there. And I suggest that you find 3 or 4 things on this list that you can make a case that your work is that. Your work might be thoroughly researched. It might have rich data. It might be of interest to a larger community. Just take this list, which came from all the things that people who work these committees say about outstanding work. And then you choose which ones are yours, and you work at making sure that is true, and you want to have confidence in that as you go in and you defend your work in front of other people. So I suggest you look at it and then you have conversations with each other. I know some of you are working with each other around this time. Have conversations about how your work exhibits mature and independent thinking, where it does that, how it does that. And then come to it with that kind of assuredness. Now, I also want to say that the same group of people in these focus groups said that acceptable work is all of these things. They're not very exciting things. And in fairness, most of you I know want to be better than is narrow in scope, displays little creativity, imagination, or insight. But know that work that is like this passes. That probably has quite a bit of work you have to do after. Most of you will face either a handshake, very good, or a little work, which you can get done in the next 6 months, or a lot of work which they expect you to get done in the next year. That's fairly typical. So you will have something that you have to do probably, and people who are pedestrian and plodding, they pass, but they have more work to do. So I don't want you to look at this list, this first list, and have huge anxiety attacks that your work isn't all of those things, because these things pass. But if you can be these things with a few of these outstanding things, then you will pass more easily. And then this is the list of what you want to stay away from. And the ones in red are ones I've actually seen happen. And again, in fairness, if it's only one thing, they'll give you a lot of work to do. Because most of the time, your committee isn't going to let you get there until you are ready to defend it. So I just really wanted you to have that set of slides. And then I also, in the Viva and Final Defense webinar, those slides have a whole big list of questions you are likely to hear, but this is a pretty basic set of questions. So at the very least, be sure that you can answer these backwards and forwards when people ask them of you. Adrian, thinking the work, doing the work, and being the work. That's it. So that's just what I wanted to say. And I didn't have work coming in as data from you this week, but I did tell everybody that I was going to answer questions. So let's just go to WooClap. Let me get there and see what questions you have. And if you have things that you want to put in here, we'll do that, because now we have a long time we can talk if we want to, because of the mix-up with time. And I'll read through what you've said. I wonder, anyway, we're living in a world of technology. Mistakes happen. And it's possible that every so often, Big Marker wants me to be in the time zone of Madrid, which would have been an hour later. So it's possible that this webinar got that bump, and that's what threw us all off. All right, so Summer QS, what have we got? So first question was, how do examiners assess the thesis? What are the criteria to pass the Viva? What makes the thesis failed or a major correction? Okay, well, that question takes us back to look a little bit more seriously here. So this is failed. This is okay. And the criteria they're really looking for is a lot of this one. the more they see, the more I think everybody hopes to walk into a committee and see work that is just brilliant or outstanding. But we've read your document before we get there. And a lot of times different universities handle committees differently. So it's not uncommon that they've sent us your work and they've sent us an analysis page, and we have analyzed it and filled it out. And then we come in with those kind of ideas that we had about your work, and then we're required as a committee to come to consensus with how much of that comes out to work that you actually have to do. So that's kind of what it's like. And there's always a wild card on a committee, somebody that nobody knows, usually somebody from another university. And that wild card person can be someone who's like well known in the field, or other people want to pander to them for political or job reasons. And that person holds a larger than average amount of weight in what they think. So to the extent you can, if you're in the United States, your supervisor is likely on your committee. If you're in the rest of the world, your supervisor might not be on your committee. They might only be allowed in the room, and everybody on your committee does not know you. And both have things that work to your benefit or not. So it's up to you to know the makeup of your committee and to have asked as many people as possible about what's required. So this is a person, a consistency of argument, original contribution, out of the box design and or analysis. Those are yours. Just choose them, stand by them, do everything you can to be that. And the more of those things there, the more likely that people will be very pleased. It's nice to be on a committee when we have to look for things to say, because really the work is just so outstanding. And part of that has to do with your ability to have conversations with us as well. So the best committee, I heard this at DCU last time I was there. A man had been recently in an architectural role, and that Viva, they'd ended up just having all of them taking out the drawings and standing around the table and having a conversation, architect to architect, about the design and how it evolved. If you can be there with your committee, if you can be the co-expert with them, and you are all talking about this topic that you are all invested in, that's really the level you want to go for, if you can. Next question. Writing up my discussion. So good for you. After I'm done with the questions, which aren't so many, I'm happy to have conversations with you about what the rest of your time looks like when you're thinking about going and to final defense and what's in the way between now and then. Perhaps we can throw some things in the fall calendar that can be useful. This person's research is three linked independent articles, considered a chapter per stage. Hold on a second. Oh no, good. So each of these chapters has a discussion in its own right and outcomes at the end of the research. So it's its own everything. And then the person is asking, so what is the conclusion here? How do they avoid repetition? I think this question is excellent for actually any part of a 3-chapter or 3-article dissertation. They are, hold on, Margie, would you get the fan on, please? I think we're going to have the fire alarm go off in my webinar in a second. Kitchen issues. So if we are putting bookends on a 3-chapter piece, then the bookends at the beginning have to lead the person who is reading it into the 3 chapters well. We have to know why these 3 chapters go together and what they had in common. And then at the end, we have to know what do those 3 things together do for the field? Because you are all moving your field just a little in one direction because of your work. So the significance of all of them together is what you focus on at the end. Not the significance of each one, but the significance of the totality of it and how other people can take that totality and then move on in their own work and do things. And so you avoid repetition by actually not focusing on the 3 individual pieces, but focusing on the big umbrella exclusively. All right, another question. Is creating a model not the same as a conceptual framework? A model and a conceptual framework are very similar. You don't test conceptual frameworks, you do test models. So if you're calling it a model, then I would expect that the data you collected tests aspects of that model and the interrelationships between the parts. You don't test conceptual frameworks. They're just things that go on in your head. So that's the most significant thing to say about that. And along the same lines, connecting a theoretical framework to a conceptual framework, they're both in our heads. But what matters is a theoretical framework often underpins our work. It's the rock or the foundation we stand on. And so it might be the ground, and the conceptual framework grows out of the ground if that's an image that will help you put those pieces together. And for many times, I've used a Venn diagram. In this case, the Venn diagram would have a line at the bottom that would be the theoretical framework, and then the conceptual would grow out of that. Okay, that's what I found when I went to questions. But now I'm open. A lot of people in the room. And let me see what you're saying to each other. And then please, if you want to talk to me live, raise your hand. I'll give you mic and webcam options if you don't have them in the room already. And so Hector's defending fall. How many of you are defending this next term? And would it be useful? We could do some fun things with defense if there was a common period of time. Like, say, if you were going to defend, a lot of defense goes on in October and November. We could have a Zoom meeting at the beginning of October, and people who were going to defend could be there, and I could ask the common questions, and you could hear the similarities and differences between those questions. And if you have specific, some of these things are a bit more difficult. So the engineers and the scientists will have a different kind of questions because in engineering and science, it's expected that your data will speak for itself. So you don't have to justify it as much, but you have to longer to talk about how you did the work you did. So anyway, that's an idea, looking at what you've said. Panic and excitement, art history thesis with the topic of Chicano muralism. Oh, fabulous. Hector, I bet your document is beautiful to look at too. And others have found that it was set to Madrid time. It is tough. It is difficult to stop researching and to synthesize. So Hector, are you still here? It looks like you had to leave, but perhaps we can talk about synthesis, to explain it to someone, to help structure my thoughts. Oh, I'm very glad actually to read what you were saying to each other. So synthesis seems to be an issue. I'm struggling with this, what I do with Lit Review. I have so many windows and articles open that are interesting and I want to include them all, but you need to focus. Yes, it needs to fit and it needs to be discussable during your final bits, or all it is adding to your reader's reading without adding value. And so I see Hector coming to the end and having so many things that need to be said. And that's a challenge of the golden thread. If your reader's only capable of taking 3 things from your document, what are those 3 things? And if you're, and the Lit Review then, so I guess we all need to have something that helps us cut things out. And if the golden thread helps me cut out excess stuff that I really want to say, if because I'm funneling somebody through, but I'm funneling them to 3 points. So if I have a big funnel and a whole lot of stuff isn't going to get them to those 3 points, I need to take those extra pieces out. And if I have a review of literature, but my results aren't going to go there and my discussion isn't going to go there, why do I need to tell that reader about something else that I might find fascinating, but it isn't key to my work right now? You have to think your reader has very little time. So I don't know if you've ever put something down because the writer just took too long to get you to where you wanted to go, so you stopped reading, but you don't want to be that writer. So no, I didn't turn on my picture today. Thank you for noticing. It was too crazy coming in, being late, not being late. You see a blank screen. You don't see slides? Or maybe that's an old note. Yeah, Big Marker had the wrong time. Probably, Erica, it was Alana's team or Alana's issue. We don't always notice when Big Marker puts us in Madrid. After 10 a.m. on Monday to Friday is good. 10 a.m. Monday to Friday. Let's talk about timing. So 10 a.m. in Eastern time zone. No, 10 a.m. in Houston. Hector votes for 10 a.m. in Houston, which makes it 4 p.m. in Ireland, still within the time of our Dublin friends. So let's Yeah, isn't it nice? Thank you all very much. I have to say, when a teacher comes either 20 minutes early or 45 minutes late to a meeting, and the whole room is just sitting there having a good talk, I feel like you all have bonded well, and it's been a good experience because that's a test. Okay, so 10 a.m. on Thursdays would be 4 p.m. here. Only reason I can't really do that is that's kind of doctoral or Professor Maria likes that time slot, I think. So Wednesdays, how would Wednesday be? 4 p.m. Irish, 10 a.m., which would be 8 a.m. in Pacific, and 11 a.m. English or Eastern. Same time we worked for meetings. Okay, same time, maybe not the same day. Jen, would it work an hour earlier? I pushed this one to working to 5. This is 5 to 6 in my time zone. And I prefer to do it 4 to 5 if it's a office hour kind of meeting. We're not going to have we'll have a meeting. It'll be twice a month. It'll be every other week. It'll be kind of like today, actually. Like, you will have given me some ideas you want me to talk about, but we'll also take a lot of questions. I think I'm thinking about maybe making some of these Zoom meetings so people can more easily see each other. And Adrian, I see your question. I'll come back to it in a minute. So let me just propose, and then I can get yeses and nos from people who are here. So if I propose second and fourth Wednesdays at if we do 4 p.m. Yeah, 4 p.m. Irish, which is 11 a.m. Eastern, and is that 7? It might be 7 a.m. Pacific. I might have to go for an hour later. Would that work? Wednesday would not work for him. Okay, might be more complicated for him. Thank you, Renee. All right, well, what other day could we do it? We might be able to do it at this time. This time worked for most of you. Would it continue to work for you in the fall? Raise your hand or give me yeses. Or give me nos. Give me yeses or nos, really. If you would continue if it was this time. If you won't continue because you don't need it anymore, that's a no too. But I'm kind of feeling like it might be yes. Okay, well, I seem to have a lot of people who would come. And that's the first thing you have to have is enough people to make it work. Wednesday is better, Adrian says. All right. So, and Hector says he could make Wednesday. All right, so we got a lot of votes. Let me look at our numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of you said. 10 out of 12 of you, well, actually 10 out of 11 of you said that you could do. How many like Wednesday better? How many could, how many like Wednesday better? I'm getting some Wednesdays better. I tell you what, let's do it this way. Let's vote. We're going to keep it at this time, which is 5 to 6 my time, and then just vote, please, Wednesday or Tuesday. And I'll just take the call. They'll just take them. So we have Wednesdays for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. Do I have Tuesdays better? A funny way to, if we were all looking at each other, we could hold up our hands. Looks like you're voting Wednesdays. Do I have any Tuesdays? Anybody who can't make it on Wednesday? Nope. Looks like we're going to get Wednesday. All right. Well, it's nice when my calendar sort of arranges itself. Okay, so it's going to be Wednesdays. And it's going to be 5 to 6 Irish time. And I'm going to make a note to have Siobhan check to make sure there aren't any Madrids. No Madrids in our time zone. And if all of you can look as well. And we'll play. Are you comfortable with this starting at 5? So starting at our normal time, Erica, which was before an hour after when it started today. Second question about this. Are you comfortable with BigMarker or would you like Zoom better so you've all had experience with Zoom now, I'm sure. So this will be not so much a standard BigMarker thing, but more of a group that's meeting, and I'll let everybody else know of the group. Well, so we'll make it the 2nd and 4th Wednesdays of the month, which means our first 2 are the 9th and 23rd of September. So that's the 2nd and 4th Thursdays. Like Zoom better. Okay. All right. So we will, let's say, yes, Zoom. How many, I got a few Zooms, but we don't want the people who are the most gregarious to always win the day. Does anybody here like BigMarker better for meetings like this? It allows you to be more anonymous. It has some values. It allows you to be more anonymous. If you want to be able to have it recorded and watch the recording, BigMarker is better. Zoom is not so easy for our systems. BigMarker is solid for our systems because you can go in your own and look them up as well as having them come to you. Yeah, BigMarker is a better system if you're going to record and send out recordings. So I think I have to find out really how many people are watching this by recording. Yeah, I do. Okay, so I'm gonna do some data on that. I appreciate that Zoom is pretty easy to drop into and have a conversation with, and everybody can see each other. I do appreciate that. But if we have a lot of people who are watching these recordings, then yes, we can record Zoom, but the sending it on is not as clean, Jen. It'll be this time, it'll be 5 to 6, so Hector, this time. No, actually Zoom is the same with recording, Jen. What you run into is the fact that I don't publish the recordings until the next day because I'm in a time zone when after I finish with you guys, I stop for the day. So I come in the next day and then I push the recording. But what BigMarker has that Zoom doesn't have is the emails that say, are you coming? And the afterwards emails that say this is the published recording, those kind of things. Big Marker's a more sophisticated system for webinars for the little guy. Your universities probably have as much sophistication out of Zoom, but it would cost our little company 4 times as much. And Zoom auto transcribes, well, to the extent that our work is so wonderful that it needs to be auto transcribed. Yeah, the email reminders are helpful, and the being able to have them, I can keep sending them out to people who don't know us, who aren't part of the group, who might want to be part of the group more easily. Adrian's really good. We can put her in charge. I don't think Adrian wants to be in charge of sending out bunches of recordings to people who maybe signed up, et cetera, Jen. If I were Adrian, I would not want to be signed up for that task. Okay, so we are tentatively the second, and we are definitely the second and fourth. We are definitely 5 to 6 Irish. We are definitely Wednesdays. Those things are decided. I'm leaning towards Big Marker. We might try, if we don't, we might do a Big Marker and a Zoom or whatever. Okay. Adrian has a deadline. Okay, so now Adrian had a question. I just have to find it. A serious academic question, which was about what do you do if you have conceptual people with different conceptual designs? Boy, we talked so much. How do you address the question of how would your study be different if a different conceptual framework was used? Be prepared to think ahead. How else might this study have been approached and tackled? So, Adrian, you heard somebody who had that question asked of them? My first question is why would anybody ask? I'm always looking at committee members from the point of view of what are they after? Are they after like trying to make the student look bad? Are they after trying to show off their own expertise? Are they after trying to push their own agenda? Or are they after really an honest evaluation of somebody's work? A more, I think, legitimate way to ask about conceptual framework, if you are proposing a really strong conceptual framework in your field, then it's legitimate to say, are you familiar with this other really strong conceptual framework in the field? And how do you contrast and compare the two? And how might the other one have ended up with a different study? That's an expert to expert conversation that can be very interesting. But if somebody just asked, how would your study be different if anything? If you had different methodology, if you had different conceptual framework, if you had a different theoretical underpinning, good to think ahead, but not good to stress over it, because I don't think those come up very often. I mean, why would the people be asking that? There is, though, just to point you to the PD Education right-hand side to-do list with the must-see videos. Surviving your Viva and Final Defense has 3 or 4 really good slides. I did a big research on every blog that had ever been written at the time about what people were saying about what questions they ask. And I pulled them together in topical areas. So questions about methodology, questions about lit, and those will give you a good running sense of at least what people were writing at the time, and they don't change that much. Hector, I can't tell you what they're asking for specifically in art history, though. But but certainly, how do you compare and contrast the part of it that you have studied versus another part that is similar or different? Or you're studying the muralists, as I remember, and you might be asked for some comparison with some of the artists in the same time period who were not muralists. That's one of her killer questions. So you, yeah, it is. Adrian's telling the story. We've of yeah, I have it, Adrian, about Zoom. I have it. It just doesn't have the it doesn't have all the marketing backup that Big Marker has. And so as a company, we're reaching out to lots and lots of people who don't know us, or who get a random email from us once a month. So Zoom, in order to get everything I get for Big Marker in Zoom, it would have to be Zoom Enterprise. And that's a whole nother gig. And then the cost per seat goes way up. I have 500 seats here. Often have troubles connecting to the network. Well, Jen, you should talk to these people. They are there if you have connection problems, and they'll need to know what browser and what part of the country you're in and whatever, but let me know how that conversation goes. In fact, CC me on it, please, because I'm always been interested in whether or not they were as good for people who come to our webinars as they are for us. I do hear that you like Zoom. I hear that. Okay. What else, you guys? And should I shut down the recording for the poor people who, yeah, probably should. It's been an hour. So if you watched this through my recording, apologies again for it being a bit unstructured, mostly playing to the live people in the room. Hopefully the conversation about how we're going to go forward for fall is useful to you, and also the bit about the final defense, which we will see more. I'm committed to offering some kind of support system for people who have data and are working to finish. It can include having a quick examination of how things are going together. It can include topical questions such as the ones that we've had all the season, and it also can include you're in a particular field and you're curious about how things are happening in that field. I just need to have some forewarning so I can prepare for some of the questions that are a bit more topically oriented to a particular field. With that, I'll stop the recording. If you're a standard PD education customer through a university, your data gets flushed about the 15th of this month. Between the 12th and the 15th, you will no longer be able to get into a PD education site until your school re-enrolls you in the fall. So be prepared for that, and watch for the email that comes out this week that talks about the box sets that we're producing of all of the recordings from this summer boot camps, and also how you sign up for the groups in the fall. Okay, that takes care of the recording.